Now, there probably was a King Arthur, but probably not the King Arthur of modern novel and television. Certainly not the King Arthur of Merlin's magic. And a lot of legends have grown up about King Arthur and his knights, and this is one of them, and it's called the Marriage of Sir Gawain. Gawain, he was the nephew of King Arthur, and surely he was one of the wisest and most chivalrous of the knights of the Round Table. And this is the story of how he came by his bride. Now it happened that King Arthur was travelling in the north of his realm, when his path through a wood was blocked by a huge and hairy man wielding a wooden club. "Out of the way and let me pass," said the king. "Ah, King Arthur, pass if you can," jeered the huge hairy man. Thinking to teach this lad a lesson, up went the king's sword, and down came the fellow's club, and somehow there was the King of England lying in the dirt. And how that huge and hairy man did beat King Arthur, beat him until he was black and blue, then tied him hands and feet under the belly of his own horse and led him away to a grim and grimy castle. And when he came to his senses, Arthur realized that some magic was afoot, and found himself powerless in the castle of the huge and hairy man, and he was forced to serve as his drudge and to perform the most degrading tasks imaginable. And after several days of this, unable to bear such degradation, he humbled himself and knelt before the huge and hairy man and begged to be released, for whatever ransom might be asked. "Why, King Arthur, I thought to have your head after you had served me a while, but I'm a sporting fellow," rumbled the huge and hairy man, "so I shall let you go on one condition. Within a year and a day you will bring me the answer to a riddle I shall ask you, and if you do not bring the answer, then I'll have your head." Arthur was relieved to accept. He was good at riddling, and so were the people of his court, so he was sure he could find the answer to any riddle. "So what is your riddle?" he said. "Riddle me this," said the huge hairy man. "What is it that a woman most desires?" "What is it, Arthur, that a woman most desires?" "The answer in a year, or your head." So Arthur was released from his captivity, and when he got back to Camelot, he called his knights and their ladies and the courtiers to him, told them of the witchery that had befallen him, of the promise he had been forced to make, and of the riddle. "What is it that a woman most desires?" he asked them. "Riches," said one. No, love," said another. "Beauty," said a third. "A noble husband," said a fourth, and many a husband said what a woman most desires is a life of idleness. Oh, they all had answers, but they all had different answers. None could agree. So Arthur knew that it wasn't going to be so easy to find the correct answer. But there was time. He and his knights rode east, and they rode west, they rode south, and they rode north. They rode to every corner of the country and questioned all they met, but no one seemed to agree on the answer. And the year passed, and it came time for Arthur to set out for that grim and grimy castle, knowing in his heart that he had not found one answer. Yet he was resolved to meet his fate with chivalry and courage. And he was riding alone and silent through a wood full of darkness, when he came across a bent and cloaked figure sat upon a rock. So evil did the figure appear that he turned his horse aside to keep distance between him and this hag. But she called to him in a cracked voice, "King Arthur, do you not want to hear what I have to say? Do you not want to hear the answer to the riddle you have been set?" Arthur urged his horse towards the crone. He caught but a glimpse through her hood of the most hideous features he had ever looked upon, of running sores and greasy hair and teeth rotting in their gums. And he would have turned, but she held him with her one good eye, beckoned him with a grimy talon. "So what is it that woman most desires?" she jeered. "I cannot tell," admitted Arthur. "But I can. If you grant me my wish, and if you swear to tell no other but the huge hairy man the answer that I shall give, I will tell you." "Your wish is granted, and I shall tell no other," said Arthur without thought, and leaned close to the stinking breath of the creature to hear her whisper the answer to the riddle. He breathed a sigh of relief when he realized at last that he had the answer, then said, "So what is it you wish of me? Gold, jewels, titles, land?" "I want no gold, no jewels, no titles nor land. All I want is one of your knights as husband. I shall come to your court in 1 month's time, and you will wed me to one of your knights." Arthur felt the sickness in his belly. How could he ask one of his knights to marry such a bride? But before he could speak, the crone had faded into the mist, and he was alone. He soon found himself at that grim and grimy castle, facing the huge and hairy man. "Ah, King Arthur, you have returned. Am I to have the answer, or am I to have your head? Now, I'm a sporting man. I'll give you 3 answers. What is it that woman most desires?" "Love?" said Arthur. "No." "Beauty?" "No." "No, King Arthur, you seem not to have the answer. So perhaps it is your head I shall have," laughed the huge hairy man, and reached for the great battle-axe that hung against the wall. But Arthur stopped him with a gesture, looked him in the eye, and gave him the answer that the old hag had told him. "Curses!" swore the huge hairy man, flung down the axe, and strode away in anger, for that indeed was the right answer. So King Arthur mounted, rode away from the grim and grimy castle, and although he went with his head still upon his shoulders, his heart was heavy with the promise he had made to the old hag. Word of his coming went ahead of him, and his knights and their ladies received him with great joy. "So you found the answer to the riddle, my lord? Pray, what was it?" they asked. "I am sworn not to tell," he replied. "But why so sad, lord?" they asked. And he told them of the promise that he had given, that in return for the answer to the riddle, one of his knights must marry the foulest of old crones. Without hesitation, it was Gawain who stepped forward. "I will take her, my lord." "Ah, Gawain, she is the foulest woman I have ever set eyes upon. I could not wish her upon my enemy." "I will take her, my lord." "She saved your life," insisted Gawain. In great sorrow, Arthur had to accept. So the wedding date was set, and the preparations for the feasting put in hand. At last the day came, and all the court lined the gateway to welcome the woman who had saved the king, and was now to be bride of Sir Gawain. But all recoiled in horror as the bride-to-be rode into Camelot. On a scrawny donkey she rode. Her hair was filthy tangled, her head bald in patches. Her skin was flaking, her nose dribbling and warty. Shrunken lips were drawn back over yellowed stumps of a few remaining teeth. Her scrawny body was like a sackful of bones, and her naked feet were like claws. And she stank. Dressed in an old gown of white lace, she was a mockery of a bride. Yet gallant Gawain greeted her and handed her down from the wretched beast, and not a flicker of the horror that turned his stomach showed upon his fine features as he led her into the hall and took his place beside her at the wedding feast. Most had little stomach for feasting, except the bride. She ignored both platters and knives, but with ragged nails tore at the meat and bread, cramming food into her mouth until the juices ran down her chin and dropped onto her withered breasts. She had enough for 6, drank enough for 9, belched like a dozen. The guests were quick to depart, and so it was that Gawain found himself alone with her in the bridal chamber. "A kiss for your bride, then," cackled the grotesque creature. And Gawain, feeling an immense pity for one so ugly, closed his eyes and kissed her watery old mouth. She embraced him. And instead of the sack of bones and the parched skin he had expected, there was a sudden softness of flesh in his arms, and a fragrance as of roses in his nostrils. And he opened his eyes to find trembling and blushing before him an unblemished beauty of no more than 18 years, in the full flower of her maidenhood. He stood back in amazement, and she smiled. "Sir, your kiss has freed me from the spell cast upon me by that same huge and hairy man who overcame Arthur with his evil magic. I am your bride, and happy to be so, most gentle of knights. But I am only half freed of the evil cast upon me. Only half of my time can I spend in this, my true form. The other half must be spent in the loathsome form of the hag you thought you were marrying. So what will you choose, Gawain? Will you have me like this, at night, or by day?" Without hesitation, Sir Gawain answered, "The choice must be yours, my bride. Your will is mine." The girl gave a cry of joy, flung her arms about her groom. "Gawain, now you have broken the spell completely, for you, without thought, have just answered the riddle that was posed to King Arthur. What is it that a woman most desires? Why? Since Eve first walked, her one desire is still, in all her dealings, just to have her will. You have given me freedom of choice, Gawain, and that is what woman most desires." She stood back from him, holding her arms out, so that he might see her in her full beauty. "This will now be my shape forever. I will be beautiful for you by day and by night."